Hi, I'm Norm Abram. Welcome to the new Yankee Workshop. It used to be that a paneled room was a big deal.
For 21 seasons spanning over 20 years and 282 episodes, Norm Abrams built some of the most beautiful woodworking projects ever put on television. There were no celebrity guests or brand distractions, just a man with the right tools and a passion that kept millions coming back each week. So when the announcement came in 2009 that the show was canceled, no one saw it coming. What really happened behind the scenes? And is there evidence to prove it? Join us as we uncover the true reason why the new Yankee Workshop came to an end. The man before the show. The real reason why the new Yankee Workshop ended doesn't just trace back to a boardroom. It traces back to a basement workshop in the late 50s, and a father who built things with his hands. Louis Abram was a self-employed carpenter, skilled enough to build the house his entire family grew up in. And it all comes down to one decision his father made on a Christmas night. Norm was around 7 years old when it happened. His father gave him a toolbox one Christmas. It was not a toy set, but a real kit with actual tools: a toothed saw, a heavy hammer, and real nails. The kind of gift no parent would hand a child today. Even Norm knew it as a child. Yet, decades later, he would admit that the toolbox was the single thing that changed the trajectory of his life. Under strict supervision, he learned to use those tools by observation, following his father to work on home projects near and far away. When he was 9, Norm was actively working on client job sites, mainly assisting with installing hardwood floors. Then he would take the scrap wood back home to try out the next small project he thought up during the work. Most of his free time from high school and even through college were spent alongside his father, especially during the summer. In his mind, it was clear he enjoyed guiding stuff, and it was likely for this reason that he enrolled at the University of Massachusetts to study mechanical engineering. But it didn't take before he found the courses uninteresting and switched to business administration. But then, in 1972, he left the school with a few credits short of his degree to pursue carpentry as a full-time job. And as we'll see, what came next was quite unexpected. As being very skilled at the craft, it didn't take long for him to land a job, first working for 3 years as a site supervisor at a large construction company in New England. With the money he saved up, he started his own company in 1976, and the first independent project was building a general store in Nantucket. At around this time, an aspiring TV producer needed help building his home's barn and garden. He hired Norm to do this in 1979, and was so impressed by his work that he invited him to join the renovation work being filmed for an upcoming TV show he was working on. During that time, Marash described Norm as, quote, being nervous as hell, but credible, believable, and compelling enough both in person and on camera. He appeared many times for the next decade on the show as Master Carpenter, along with a rotating cast of hosts and tradespeople. His first few appearances on This Old House garnered lots of attention, leading to more appearances in over 1,000 episodes over 43 years. But let's not get ahead of ourselves, because this is the part that changed everything. Seeing how confident Norm had grown and become on camera, Marash decided to build him his own TV show. And the result of this was the new Yankee Workshop, a project that would change his life forever. The new Yankee Workshop. This show was formed in the same barn Norm had built in Marash's backyard exactly 10 years ago, except now it was expanded to Norm's preferences. Now it has a concrete floor with radiant heating, a 16-foot ceiling with skylights, and a sliding barn door on the west wall. Just the way he liked it, with the table saw sitting at the center. Each episode of the show followed the same structure, with Norm visiting a historical piece of furniture. Whether it was a shaker side table, a blanket chest, or a Chippendale mirror, he would spend time studying the near-impossible craftsmanship behind what made it so special before returning to the shop to do it himself. Every shot of this process was filmed with every decision said out loud in each step. The first episode aired for the first time on January 7, 1989, and featured Norm visiting a retiring room at Hancock Shaker Village in western Massachusetts to study a medicine cabinet. Then he went to the ship and built his own version using red oak. And as impressive as that was for the time, Norm would admit 20 years later that it was rough around the edges. He said, and we quote, "When we started, I was a carpenter and not a woodworker. I was not only teaching, I was learning it at the same time." To avoid making rough products, in later seasons, he would build a full prototype of every single project off camera before deciding whether trying to do so on film would be worth it or not. If what comes out makes the cut, then it would be content for the next episode. If not, it would be either added to his private collection or donated to charity. But what made Norm Abram stand out the most at his job wasn't his skill or healthy perfectionism. Rather, it was his unique respect for his audience, the kind that took strong skill and genuineness. He never talked down to those who learned from him and always explained complex details on screen with the same patience used to explain how to sharpen a chisel. Fans simply loved his work. And for this reason, PBS carried the show, riding on the momentum of Season 1's success with almost no pressure. It was a show that didn't need celebrity guests or elimination rounds to garner excitement from audiences. Fast forward 21 seasons later, and the show's many achievements are nothing short of breathtaking. The show's biggest successes and awards. The success and popularity of the new Yankee Workshop brought with it a myriad of accomplishments hardly seen before in the name of a TV show. One standout moment came towards the end of the final season in 2009 when the American Academy of Ophthalmology gave Norm their EyeSmart Distinguished Service Award. This was an honorable achievement. No questions. But here is the detail most people missed back then, and even today. This moment was the first time the award had ever been given. It was created specifically for his 20 years of constant safety reminders on screen. Before that outstanding feat were many other awards and public recognitions. The new Yankee Workshop won the Daytime Emmy Award for Outstanding Service Show in 1997, 1998, and 2000. 1999 wasn't left out of this, as it was the year when the show won yet another Emmy Award, this time for single-camera editing. This meant 4 Emmy wins across 6 seasons of the show and 4 consecutive years. It was during this time the show underwent serious changes in anticipation for Season 21. Many saw it as the next big step for the next group of seasons, perhaps extending up to Season 30. The new Yankee Workshop had followed the same pattern that had proven successful up to that point. And though there was no point fixing what wasn't broken, there were even more achievements to be made by improvement. Signs of major change were already made obvious in Season 20, as the 9 episodes of that project were centered around remodeling Morash's home kitchen. Yet a bigger surprise was on the horizon. When Season 21 came around, there were no new builds, and a huge chunk of its episodes were just highlights from Seasons 9 and 10, with each of them starting with a newly recorded introduction from Norm. It was the only season structured this way, and the final episode aired on June 27, 2009. Many fans saw this as a sign the show was undergoing major changes, and Season 21 was simply an attempt to keep them invested, while Norm was cooking up something more exciting behind the scenes. After all, the show was successful and had little to no reason to end so abruptly. The original plan of the show was 4 seasons, but 10 seasons passed within a decade, and then 21 at this point. Over that time, woodworking club memberships grew across the country, with tool sales spiking on weekends after new episodes aired. Many trade school instructors from back then often joked about how new students walked in with the show as their lead reason for signing up. But, as we'll see, it came at a huge cost. The real work behind each episode. With great fame and influence came painful physical demands, with symptoms going all the way back to the beginning. The entire show and workshop, from concept to reality, was designed around mainly one person performing every stage of a woodworking project from start to finish. And though it was later confirmed that he did get assistance from some production crew familiar with his work, most of the physical workload was on him for the sake of making the show authentic. For this to work, each action has to carry forward from the previous one, and every error needs correction in real time or a complete reset in filming different parts of each episode. Even before filming could begin, the process already brought lots of strain. And with Norm taking bigger challenges with each passing season, many mistakes were made along the way. And to avoid showing rough drafts as final products, at the end of an episode, a huge number of the projects needed at least one full prototype built beforehand to determine if it was worth the time and risk. Yet, as we'll see, all that wasn't even the hard part. The final products of his work were pulled off using hardwoods like oak, maple, and cherry. Milling these materials required the use of heavy machinery, and with the prototypes already built beforehand in some cases, Norm was already tired from a complete build cycle before filming had even begun. Filming itself felt like a nightmare almost half of the time, with some parts of the work needing to be repeated under stricter conditions. He couldn't rush through physically demanding stages, and these parts that could be completed more quickly in an Oracle workshop had to be slowed and articulated. As most craftsmen would tell you, staying at specific postures for longer periods of time over this kind of work comes with a heavy physical toll over time. The intense production schedule made it a lot worse. For one, workloads often extend to 70-hour weeks of non-stop cutting, lifting, and assembling. Secondly, many forgot that Norm Abram was still working on this old house. As a result, recovery time after each project became almost non-existent, and as the seasons progressed, the effects slowly but surely became evident. The repetitive movements brought joint pains in the hands, wrists, and shoulders, while back pain and other related issues developed. One of the more clearly identified conditions he had to deal with was plantar fasciitis, a condition associated with prolonged standing on hard surfaces. But despite these issues developing over time, there was no visible change in his performance on screen, as the format of the show that worked so well required a strong level of consistency to stay relevant. But behind this, there were underlying conditions that had been piling up for years. Eventually, these issues reached a point where continuing with the show was no longer possible, and it all led to a viral announcement that no one saw coming.
It is not a coincidence that these structures still stand this day. Over the decades, the village has spent millions of dollars and countless hours toward the important work of preserving these structures.
The end of the show. By mid-2009, Norm Abram was about 60 years old and had been struggling with lots of physical pain. For this reason, conversations had already begun quietly between Norm, Marash, and WGBH Boston on the future of the show. And after a few months of negotiations, Norm made his final decision. He did it on his own without any pressure from the network or anyone who helped produce the show. And on October 16, 2009, an official report was issued by the main platform where the show was aired. There will be no new seasons or episodes of the new Yankee Workshop. Contrary to spreading rumors at the time, there were no creative disagreements or pressures from the network. Rather, it became clear that Norm's physical health was on the line, and all three parties deemed it wise to end things there. Without Norm, there was no show, and with this in mind, they decided to pull the plug while there was time. However, for long-term fans and viewers of the show, something felt suspicious about the announcement. It was confirmed that while his show was effectively canceled, Norm Abram would keep showing up on this old house like he always did. Some saw this as Marash taking advantage of Abram and deemed the announcement of his physical ills as misleading. To clear the confusion, Marash agreed to be interviewed about this, though many would later see this as more of a confrontation than an interview. He was asked why Norm had chosen to stop the show rather than this old house, and in response, Marash explained that appearing in his show as an assistant and consultant was a much easier arrangement for Norm. He said that though Abrams's physical condition limited his ability to run his own show, he still loved the process and wanted to be a part of the craft on camera for as long as his body would let him. Marash also explained that the show would have no replacements and no further episodes had been commissioned. He also brought up the matter of Norm's own house. All the way back in 1993, Corn Norm had built a timber-framed two-story colonial in Carlisle, Massachusetts. It was all designed and constructed by him, save for the exterior trim and cedar clapboards. The house was documented him, the book he wrote and released in 1995, Norm Abram's New House. When the show ended, there were sections of his house he never had the time to finish, with oroduction seasons consuming time year after year for over 2 decades. By 2022, after he had finally completed it, he and a local network organized an interview in that same location. In that interview, he admitted to procrastinating for almost 30 years because of how much time and energy the show demanded of him. But 1 year before the show ended, he and his wife Elise had bought an over 200-year-old farmhouse near the ocean in Rhode Island for about $2 million. In that property, he built a pottery studio as part of a new project he had in mind. A personal worship he would build with concrete forms for the walls and insulated panels for the roof. His next big project would be off-screen but more ambitious than anything he had built before. The Herreshoff sloop was a sailboat design from 1914 that is still thought of as one of the finest small boat designs ever produced. Constructing something remotely close to this level of design required going to a specialized boat-building school in New England. And with the freedom Norm now had to learn and experiment, he was going to do it.
Well, there were a lot of favorite houses for me, but the one I liked the most was the second This Old House, which premiered in 1981. It was the Bigelow House, an H.H. Richardson design, shingle-style house. Basically, it was an estate that was up on a hill.
The Man After the Show. Fine Woodworking, a niche consult agency and news outlet that mainly focused on all things carpentry, had covered the new Yankee shop throughout its entire run, and even featured Norm on its cover twice. They reported that many readers and subscribers of their magazine told unique stories about Norm Abrams never heard before. One reader wrote that Norm had turned him from a struggling wood butcher into a famous cabinet maker. Another subscriber said the show had saved him $50,000 on a kitchen renovation simply by observing 9 episodes of season 20. A retired trade teacher who had worked in the industry for almost 35 years wrote that Norm had been the best shop instructor the country had ever produced. The stories were pretty much similar on other platforms like the Lumberjacks Woodworking Forum. One member wrote that Norm had always been his inspiration and that most of his skill and ability had come entirely from watching the show, even though he had never been taught the craft by anybody. These comments all sounded happy and grateful, but something stood out about them that most people didn't realize until quite recently. Nobody in any of those threads asked who the replacement would be. It seemed the thought never once crossed their mind, like Norm was the main subject people cared about before the show and the craft. By January 2023, more than 13 years after the final episode aired, Russell Marash, the producer behind the new Yankee Shop, posted a video to the official YouTube channel with a special announcement. All 282 episodes of the show were now available to watch for free. And to celebrate that moment, he gave a tour of the old workshop and said the goal was for a whole new generation who had missed the show the first time to now have access to it anytime they wanted. But this is where it gets interesting. After all 282 episodes went live, many people watched it, and new viewers loved it. In light of the positive reception from young and aspiring craftsmen, Norm was asked what his proudest project was in all those episodes. In his words, it was not the sailing boat or outdoor structures of his highest-rated episodes. Rather, it was the Tiger Maple Highboy he built back in 2005. Though it was relatively small compared to the larger projects he took on, it was the most challenging work he had ever done in the entire history of the show, taking 2 full episodes and multiple weeks to perfect. In 2018, Norm was given the Ken Burns Lifetime Achievement Award, given to individuals who have made a huge impact on the arts important to the history and craftsmanship that Old Sturbridge Village works to preserve. Then, on his 73rd birthday, after over 43 years on television, Norm announced his retirement from this old house. And to mark that moment, PBS aired a 1-hour special called The House That Norm Built, covering the highlights of his full career on both shows. As for the workshop on Marash's property in Lexington, Massachusetts, it still stands, and Norm Abram still visits it from time to time. So, what do you think? Is there a hidden reason why the show got canceled? Is there a chance Norm might be coming back just as old times? Let us know in the comments down below. If you enjoyed the video, please make sure you like, share, and subscribe. Also, click on the next video shown on your screen. You will enjoy it.